Bridgman here.
And Jeff Bridgman of Jeff R. Bridgman, American Antiques.
Today we are at the Union Club in New York City, and today we are going to talk about this wonderful flag.
Yeah, we have an exhibition going on right here, right now, with about 40 different 13-star flags. This is the second exhibition we've ever done with just 13-star flags alone, and this one is a wonderful one. We want to tell you something about it. So, what's this star pattern called, Indi?
It's called the third Maryland.
Yeah, the third Maryland pattern, because there's at least 80 known different designs for 13-star flags alone, and this one is nicknamed after a flag that's at the State House in Annapolis, Maryland, the capital. Well, tell us about how can a third Maryland pattern flag look?
It could look like this one right here with a circle with a star in the center, or it could have an oval with a star in the center.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the nickname comes from a flag that's in Annapolis that, funny enough, isn't exactly a circle or an oval. It's kind of a lopsided circle with a star in the center. But either way, this pattern got applied to this design so that by flag aficionados, so that there would be a way to identify it. It can also be called the Cowpens pattern. I tend to use third Maryland more often, but some people use the other, and there's nothing wrong with it because it was supposed to have been carried. This was the history that was handed down with it. At the Battle of Cowpens, and a regiment led by General Daniel Morgan, and it was thought to have been carried by a guy named William Batchelor, who was the color sergeant of the Maryland Light Infantry. And it was handed down through Batchelor's family and donated to the State House. But then something happened concerning its date. There was a woman at the Smithsonian, and her name was Grace Rogers Cooper. And can you tell us about Grace?
Yeah. So Grace had an interest in flags, and then she saw this 13-star flag, and everybody thought they were older than they actually were. They were actually earlier, but everybody thought they were like in the 18...
Yeah, everybody thought that they were earlier. They thought that they dated to the 18th century, but didn't.
So she wanted everyone to know how old they were and not just mixing up the things. So she studied them, and she went to museum, like a lot of museums, and studying about these American flags. And that's how we know most of our American flags, how old they are.
Yeah, so 13-star flags, as many of you know, if you've seen any of my videos or you know anything about flags and you've been following the website for a long time, 13-star flags have been made throughout our history in America. But there was a point in time where people really didn't know that. And there was so little interest at museums that almost no one in museums understood them well. There was a flag at the Smithsonian while Grace was there that had been on display for years as being a Revolutionary War flag. But when when she finally got interested in flags, and there was somebody really making a push to understand them, she examined the flag and went through her colleagues in the Smithsonian, and they found that, oh my gosh, this flag that the Smithsonian had on display all this time wasn't Revolutionary War period at all. It rather dated probably to the 1840s at the very earliest. So she then went around to other museums where she knew there were other flags being touted as 18th century, and one by one disproved most of them, including the earliest flag thought to exist in America.
Because everybody thought they were older than they actually were.
Yeah, yep, they just assumed, okay, well, 13 stars must be 13
So
colonies,
she tried
must
to
be
help
18th century. No.
She wanted people to know their actual dates so people wouldn't get them mixed up
Yeah.
and just be saying, this is the day, date when it's actually not that date.
Yeah. What else was she interested in?
Sewing.
Yes.
And she actually made a book about the flags.
She did, and about sewing machines. So she wrote a book in the 1970s called 13 Star Flags. Great name, right? Pretty much know what that's about. And she also wrote another book with a great title, very descriptive, History of the Sewing Machine, the definitive text on the sewing machine. So she was the perfect person to go around and look at 13 Star Flags. Most antiques dealers who have been in this a long time can't identify hand sewing from machine sewing. It's just not something that most people have found interesting unless you're really into textiles. So, and even then, sometimes they don't know. So at any rate, this is a wonderful flag that, like the flag in Annapolis, probably dates to 1840s, 50s, or maybe to the Civil War period. It's entirely hand sewn, right?
You can see, because look at how many gaps.
Yeah, between the stitches, and it's wonderfully
Like,
hand sewn.
You can see, because look, there's a gap right there, there's a gap like almost everywhere around this.
Yeah, and if you look at the stars, how beautifully they're sewn. So I really love this particular flag because it's very folky. And anything that adds sort of a folk art aspect to the flag is something that adds interest. Here, look, we have a big star in the center. There isn't always a big star in the center of a third Maryland
Because
pattern.
the ones we have, some of the ones we have big stars in the center.
They
the one,
do.
Like the one we have right now has a big star in the center.
Yeah.
They can have tiny stars, they can have medium stars, they can have stars like this.
Absolutely they can. And if you see the stars here, how pointy they are and how they vary in orientation on their vertical axis, vertical axis. Look here how big the star is. It's about the size of my hand. And it's just very, very visual. I love this particular one. This is very interesting here too, how the canton has been sewn in strips of fabric that happen to be the same size as the stripes. You'll see that mostly in the mid-19th century and sometimes before. It's an early trait. Don't know exactly why they did that. They may have done it to keep a big expanse of fabric from stretching, or they may have had them cut into strips for another purpose of some sort. But that is something you do tend to see early on. It's a wool flag with cotton stars sewn to both sides. And the binding is what appears to be a homespun linen with little whip-stitched grommets, hand-sewn grommets at the top and bottom. So let me just take them in here, Indi, and give them a look at that if they can get it. Yeah, just a great folky flag. So we have a couple of others here, also in the 3rd Maryland pattern.
There's one right here.
Yeah.
And if you can't see, but all the way back here we have one.
So I scooted us over here to the other side of the table where we have less glare and can see this a little better. What do we have here, Indi?
Well, we have a flag for the president. And what president? Oh, well, General William Harrison.
Yeah.
The hero of the Tippecanoe.
Yeah, that's right. So this is William Henry Harrison. He ran for the presidency in 1840. And as you can see, we have a 3rd Maryland pattern up in the canton of stars with a great big center star. You will see, interestingly enough, in early illustrations, this star pattern appearing on flags in the 18th century. We actually know it to be a very early design, even though no surviving flags happen to have it, the date to the 18th century. We do know it was popular early on. When you do encounter examples, however, they tend to date to the mid-19th century like this flag. So Harrison ran for the White House and won in 1840.
And he's right there.
There he is. There's his mugshot right in the middle to prove it. And he was the hero of Tippecanoe. That was an Indian battle that actually took place back in 1813. He was the oldest man to run for the White House at the time.
Whoa.
And he died just 30 days into office. He gave...
Wait, he did?
He did. He died. He gave an acceptance speech on the night of his inauguration outside in super cold weather, not wearing a coat. Always wear a coat, right, Indi?
Yeah. I get sick without wearing that.
Yeah, that's right. Well, he
I
did
don't
too.
like wearing hats.
And he got pneumonia and he died just 30 days into office. But what's interesting about the 3rd Maryland pattern on this flag? Indi?
Well, what I think that's cool about this flag is actually that you know, like if you see his website or a lot of his videos, you know, the last video, it had a pretty big, decent space of blue, and you can see the stars perfectly. But this one only has actually a little bit of blue, like maybe a tiny square compared to all other flags.
Yeah,
like
look
come
at
in
it.
close and see
Yeah.
how and then look at how long this flag is.
Yeah, but
Like compared to me standing on my knees, it's like as tall as me.
right. But it's actually more narrow than it is wide. And look at the top stripe too. So
It's
not
so
only
thick.
it is, it's so wide. So not only does the canton, the blue area, rest on the 4th stripe, which is something you won't see really on any other flags. It typically rests on the 7th stripe. Not always. There was no prescribed method until much later. But you'll almost never see anything like that. Very bulky flag with 13 stripes, dating right within that typical window of when one would encounter the 3rd Maryland pattern. So there is another time when this star pattern turns up, and this is really the best example I've ever seen within that window.
It really is.
Yeah, it's beautiful, right? This is a wonderful elongated flag with a big star in the center and a circle pattern. This is made somewhere between probably 1890, early 1890s, and maybe 1910 at the outset, probably dating to the 1890s.
And it's machine stitch.
It is. This is all machine stitch. Once you get into this period, you'll
Now you
find that the stars will generally be sewn with a zigzag stitch. This was a machine stitch.
And also, you know how I knew it was actually a machine stitch? Because a machine stitch has all these connected together.
Yes.
And if you like how about, let's see, which one? And so like this one right here, is it machine stitched or hand stitched? Well, let's see.
Machine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is much earlier. This is a treadle sewn flag of the
The one
Civil
over
War
here,
period.
This is hand stitch. How do you know that? Well, look at all the gaps.
Exactly. And this is a mid-19th century flag. But in the late 19th century, we made these little flags, commercial makers did, sort of copying what the Navy did. The Navy flew 13 star flags on small boats, maybe from the very beginning onward through the 20th century. But 13 star flags were popular on maritime for maritime use, and generally on any smaller flags, because at a distance you could discern the stars better if there were fewer of them. Commercial makers, when they first went about making small flags, they chose the 13 star count rather than the full star count, and copying what the Navy did, and they were very popular. People loved 13 star flags. This is just a wonderful one. Most do not appear in the 3rd Maryland pattern, so it's scarce at this time, but it's another time that you'll see it. So thanks for joining us today here at the Union League Club in New York City. We hope to see you again soon.